I wonder what the founders of this country would have thought if they knew that the government would grow to create flying machines that dropped bombs on American citizens. Now, I'm not the biggest lover of the founders or the Constitution itself, but I do think this is not what they intended. And I do think that citizens, even back in the day, at the beginning of this country, the birth of this nation, and going before that, the people who were here, might find it outrageous to think that a governing body, again, with a gun to the head of the people, ruling over them, could tell them, if you talk to the wrong groups that we deem as terrorists, if you fund them, if you talk about them, if you support them, whatever support means, then we could erode the Constitution, erode your right to a trial by jury and judge, and drop a bomb on you. Not only that, but we can override another nation's sovereignty and say, hey guys, you're holding somebody that we don't like, and they're one of our citizens, so we're going to come kill them. And what are they going to do about it? We're the big bad United States. Now specifically, I'm talking about the case of Anwar al-awlaki and his son, who were both killed by drone bombing, the drone assassination, at the hands of President Obama. Anwar al-awlaki was bombed on September 30th, 2011 in Yemen. He was suspected of having ties to al-Qaeda, and yes, he was putting out propaganda videos, encouraging people to rise up against the United States, and the United States government also tried to tie him to the 2009 Christmas Day underwear bomber, but look into it further, guys. That whole thing's a farce, so I doubt al-awlaki is connected to that. Anyways, though, they've been working to connect him to these terrorists, and they decided in secret that they were going to take him out. Now, most Americans wouldn't even bat an eye. They're like, okay, cool, another terrorist, Middle Eastern person, Arab that I don't care about, go ahead and kill them. Except this time, the person in question, Anwar al-awlaki, was an American citizen who was from New Mexico. He was born in New Mexico. He eventually turned towards supporting the war against America. Now, this is not without, I would say, without cause, because if you look into the history of Anwar al-awlaki and his treatment by the United States government, they long suspected him having ties to terrorists. They interrogated him, harassed him, temporarily imprisoned him, put him in solitary confinement, and when he came out, he was a different man. He left and he began propagating a message against the United States and encouraging other people to take up arms against the United States. And the fact that he was a United States citizen, ultimately, Obama decided it didn't matter. Now, there have only been scant details on what exactly was the process that Obama took to make this happen. Lawyers from the ACLU, reporters from the New York Times, they've been filing FOIA requests against the Obama administration to find out who led the charge to do this, under what legality, and whether or not it was actually even constitutional. So the FOIA lawsuits have been going on for a while now, and recently we've seen two memos come out of this. One was released a couple of months ago that showed very little detail, and now we have another one that was even earlier. It's dated February 19th, 2010. And this was the first memo authored by Federal Appeals Court Judge David Barron. So again, we don't see much details in the memo. They don't actually say under what law this is constitutional. There's tons of information redacted and blocked out, so we only get pieces of it. But what we did find brings up some interesting points. Barron uses a Supreme Court decision regarding law enforcement officers' ability to use deadly force against suspects they believe are dangerous to them to justify the killing of an American citizen in another country. Barron writes, "The Supreme Court has noted if a suspect threatens the officer with a weapon or there is probable cause to believe he has committed a crime, including the infliction or threatened infliction of harm, deadly force may be used." So they take a ruling from the Supreme Court dealing with law enforcement in the United States and say, if Anwar al-awlaki has propagated a message of threats towards the United States government, then this allows us to use deadly force. Then they also mention a couple times, we don't think this would be problematic with him being an American citizen. So they knew that people would think, okay, what about this guy's American rights? I mean, even if you are a so-called terrorist, and I would argue just any human beings around at all, anywhere, no matter what arbitrary borders you live in, whatever country nation, you want to claim that you deserve a trial, you deserve to have your case heard, even if you're a so-called terrorist or whatever other derogatory term they want to use to demonize people. But the United States government disagreed, and what they're saying is if you propagate a message that is against the federal government and propagate a message that they say is about inflicting or threatening to inflict harm, then you basically lose your citizenship, you basically lose your constitutional rights, and they have the ability to assassinate you. We also know about the National Defense Authorization Act, which of course allows the definite detention of American citizens. So as we see this movement awakening of people rejecting the federal government's power and looking at situations like Ferguson and what happened in Boston, these police states that pop up in the name of keeping us safe or keeping the people down, people are waking up and they are propagating a message against the federal government. I mean, this whole message right here is against the federal government. And how long is it going to be before they say, okay, this person is becoming too loud and too dangerous, they just lost their constitutional rights and citizenship, drop a bomb on them, or indefinitely detain them? Of course, right now it's happening to a brown person in another country, so some people are like, oh, that'll never happen here. But that's how things happen. They do it incrementally. They talk about, oh, it's a terrorist. So some people justify it. Yeah, he was an American citizen, but he shouldn't have been a terrorist, so it's okay. But how long before it's an American citizen who just runs a website, who speaks out against people? I mean, we've seen examples of people likely being suicided or dying under mysterious circumstances, and who's to say that's not this program covertly working? But how long until they do it out in the open? You have to ask yourself, if you care about freedom, if you care about liberty for all, then why don't you care about Anwar al-awlaki? This week I stumbled into a story that detailed how flotation tanks, also known as sensory deprivation tanks, isolation tanks, can be useful and helpful towards veterans dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. The story